Black hoodie people. All right. Let's see. We will give one more minute, then I'll start. I hope you guys washed your hands before you came here. Busy pressing the screen. We're going to behave like parliament people. Can you hear me? Am I clear? Nyang bona na. Ooh. I should get my dog, which I don't have, to start barking. Right, while we wait for the other children, let me unmute some of you. Who of you watched the parliament meeting?
I watched it, but I was confused of what was going on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Why exactly do you allow yourself to be confused? So are we ready to come back next week? It won't be next week, but are we ready if it's next week?
Yeah.
Do we have our masks? And I la sending.
We ordered masks, so we're still waiting for them to come in.
Yeah, even mine, they're in the years or somewhere. But seeing that COVID will be with us for long, maybe I must customize mine. I don't know. Who of you doesn't want to come back because you're scared of dying? Be honest, sure. Gibb says he's scared of dying. David, that's nice. Who else doesn't want to come back? Oba knows was
Him.
Natakalo vele when I don't know if you love your life, eh? You're such a risk taker. Okay, but an interesting thing is seeing how people are very quick to be scared, but they don't wonder when they were gonna go to work, were they also not going to die? Like, I think as adults, it's a bit weird to watch adults stress over illogical things. Their children will kill them, but they won't die when they go to the shop. But it's fine. Welcome Our Madala, hello, my president, Angalboni, in a long time, Kyo. Ipijamale.
Yeah,
You okay? It's fine. I think let's start because our lessons don't last long. And then at the end, I'll unmute everyone again. So let's mute everybody. And let's start. Good. So our lesson today is from your textbook. I hope you guys have it at home somewhere, not in the locker eskolweni. It's page 157 until 163, okay? So it shouldn't be too difficult a lesson. And I've added some extra things, especially for those of us who's doing poor service delivery as your project topic, okay? Because you will see that there are some correlations and there's some information that you can use from today's lesson. But then the secret is, if you are going to quote my slides, you must reference them because I'm gonna ask you who told you these things, okay? So there are very specific things. And then on Edmodo, I'm going to give you links of videos that also spoke about this. Then in your project, you can reference the videos from YouTube, okay? So our focus today, at the end, you should be able to answer the following questions. Who's responsible for providing environments and services to promote safe and healthy living? What are educational and intervention programs? And what are impact studies? Okay, so let's start with understanding the government because some of the things we are seeing during COVID are showing us that we don't understand the government we voted for and the structure. So you'll hear people, they'll tell you that there's like 3 branches of government, or they'll tell you stuff like government is divided between national, provincial, and local. So let's start with national. Today, when we watch the news, or when we watch that link with the Director General of Basic Education speaking to a parliamentary committee, that is national government talking amongst themselves. Okay, so national government is the president and his cabinet, and then parliament is the other parties we voted for. Parliament's job is to make sure that national government is not making decisions incorrectly or breaking the law or not planning things carefully. That's why before Minister Angie tomorrow gets to tell us when schools open, they have to meet the committee from Parliament, and Parliament must challenge them and say, did you think of this? Did you think of that? Are you really sure? Are you, whatever. It's their job to do that. Okay, so that's what national government does. National government decides the laws, decides the budget, decides what we want to achieve this year. Provincial government then is where we then see things like when we hear about Premier Makura, when he walks around and goes to the hospitals and he's saying this and this, that and that. So provincial government gets a budget from the national or from Treasury and decides for Gauteng, here's what we're going to do. For Limpopo, here's what we're going to do. The very same provincial government will have its own departments. So in Gauteng, there'll be the Gauteng Department of Education, there will be the Department of Health, Department of Social Development, and their job is to implement the things that the national government wanted to implement, okay? Then we go down to local government. So local government, that's where we talk about municipalities, okay? So when we hear about our previous mayor, Mr. Mashaba, he is the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. All of us, our municipality is the city of Johannesburg. And when we will talk about service delivery, the people who have to give services is the municipality. It's not the government when we talk about national, it's not the province, it's literally the municipality you are under. They are the ones who must provide the services. So when you're doing your project and doing stuff on poor service delivery, you mustn't be telling me that because the government is corrupt. That's not true. You need to tell me that it is the local municipality that isn't doing the things it said it will do. Because those are the people who are supposed to give services. It's not the government. And why should it be just the local government? Because let's think of this logically. Imagine if you had to call President Ramaphosa and say, yo, President, yazi, Mr. Maseo got this mean class, can you intervene? I mean, that's a bit silly because the president can't be dealing with minor things at the bottom. The job of the municipality is to deal with the everyday running of Alexandra, of Rodeport, of Randburg. The government, in terms of national, make sure there is money, make sure we have the laws that support the country to function properly. But the people who must implement are us here at the bottom, it's the local government. So the things that you need to be able to tell the difference with is what is a law. So when you've been doing your project, you should be seeing that there is the Domestic Violence Act, or you will see the Municipalities Act. So those are the laws. When you talk about the Constitution, that is also the law. That's where all the decisions have to be taken from. Whatever action is done by any member of government, they have to be able to go back and say, I'm referring to this specific law before I comment or before I make a decision. Then when we talk about regulations, a regulation is different to a law. A law is an overall thing. So it says, do not murder. That is the law. Everyone has a right to schooling. That is the law. However, a regulation now tries to give details to how do we achieve that? How do I make sure that you get to be able to go to school? So I regulate and I say, all children under the age of 16 have to be in a school. Otherwise, the parent can be arrested for not putting their child in a school. Then people can be saying, but what if they can't afford? It will be in regulations that says there have to be free schools available. And then they'll say, but in my area, there isn't one. While under the regulations, it will say that the nearby school will have to subsidize or allow you to attend for free. So regulations are details that help the law to be achieved. And the last big word that you're going to have to know, which we will talk a lot about, is competencies. So to be competent is to be good at something. Okay, so now when we talk about competencies for government, those are the things we are supposed to measure them against. So when you talk about, let's say, a bad teacher, a teacher has to have competencies of being able to do the following: to communicate clearly, to give you work, to answer your questions, to be prepared. That's what we will measure them against. We won't measure a teacher against, were you sure if the child ate at home? No, that's not their competency. Their competency is, did they deliver the message? Did they prepare the lesson? So when we talk about the municipalities later, their competencies will literally be, were they able to fix potholes? Were they able to fix the drained pipes, the blocked drains, for instance, at home, things in your community? So that is competencies. We will get to that a bit later. So I sort of explained this, but I'll go over it again as a quick summary. So an act, when it's created, it gives us an overall understanding of what needs to be done. A regulation gives us the practical steps. And for instance, rules give us punishments that can happen. if something is not kept. So if we know that if I have a child who's 14 and they don't go to school, if I don't have a very good reason, I can be arrested because it is a rule. So that is then the differences you need to check. And in your textbook, you will see examples of acts. Okay, so these acts, they are meant to protect and promote safety and healthy living. So on page 158 in your textbook, you will see all those acts and they explain them very well. And how to understand an act. So if we look at that first one, National Water Act of 1998. So the first part is what is the act about, and then the year is when was that act brought into law. Okay, so that's just a basic understanding. So you can't, for instance, say, talk about an act that did not exist in a specific year. So you can't say, according to the National Act of 2003, in 1998, people were living like this and this. No, that's not true. The act didn't exist then. So only after 2003 do we measure how well did the act behave, how well did the act influence people's lives, because it was implemented in 2003. Good. So here's where we're going to focus only on municipalities and what we expect from them. Okay, so that's local government. So in South Africa, there's 278 municipalities. That's a crazy number. And how are these municipalities divided? You have 8 metropolitan municipalities, 44 district municipalities, and 226 local municipalities. Is Johannesburg a metropolitan or a district or a local municipality? Who has a potential answer? Unmute yourself and tell me. Is Johannesburg a metropolitan municipality, a district municipality, or a local municipality? Any guesses? No brave souls. Unmute yourself if you have an answer. So we don't have brave people. It's fine. So Johannesburg is a metropolitan.
It's a metropolitan.
Yeah. So, so the metropolitan municipalities are the municipalities where the city or the town is quite big. So we have Tshwane, we have Johannesburg, we have Ekurhuleni, then you have the Nelson Mandela one, then you have the one in Cape Town. So the big cities in our country, they tend to be metropolitan municipalities, and they're the biggest in size. And then you have district and local. So the 226, when we talk about local municipalities, it's the ones that are meant to deal with very remote areas. So it's towns, communities, villages that are very far from the main city. And for government to be able to implement and help those communities, they actually have to have a municipality that is closer. But because Johannesburg is quite big, and there's so many townships and there's so many suburbs in the area, it doesn't make sense to have smaller nyana. Every little Roodepoort has its own municipality, and then Randburg has its own municipality. That would not work, and that would increase the likelihood of money being wasted. Okay, good. So how then are municipalities funded? Because that is what will influence service delivery. So there's 3 ways that a municipality will be funded. Government grants. So when government says, okay, here's the budget for this year, budget for education, budget for social development, budget for health, here's the amount. Then they divide it equally amongst their provinces and then amongst their municipalities. So government grants, then bank loans, let's say a province is deciding that it, or a municipality is deciding it needs to do a lot of infrastructure and government didn't give them enough. They can go directly to the bank and then rates and taxes. So when your parents are paying for dustbin removal, they're paying for this for water and sanitation, they're paying for electricity, they're paying for rates and taxes of the house. That money is meant to go to the municipality so that they can do the maintenance of our area. That's the main way that they get their money. Good. Then, when we look deeper then at what then does a municipality do, there are some things that municipality does together with province, and there are some things that municipality does together with national, and then there's some things that municipalities does on its own. And the different things make sense. For instance, the government is in charge of education. It's not your municipality, because imagine that. Imagine if your municipality decided, in our area, we just want to teach everyone farming, because who wants to be a doctor? We don't need doctors. And speak to the gods. That would be quite silly. So the national is in charge of education, but the municipality will be maybe in charge of ensuring that the schools in the area, that they don't have blocked drains. So when our school last year had all those water problems, it was the municipality we had to wait for to come deal with the water issues. Because we can't now call the government or call the Minister of Water Affairs and say, asnamans. That would be, again, quite a waste of her time. So different areas have different expectations. So here are the main services your municipality is meant to give you. They're in charge of dealing with electricity, water and sanitation, refuse removal, so that is your dustbin and our rubbish, roads, parks and recreation, community halls and public spaces and cemeteries. That is what your municipality is meant to deal with. And the 5 focus areas, first of all, it's that your municipality has to make sure that they are democratic and accountable. That's why we vote for who's going to take care of your ward and who's going to be the mayor of our city, so that we make sure that if the mayor does bad things, we can remind them that we voted for you. Then the job of the municipality is to provide us our services in a sustainable way. So they can't provide a service this year and then next year say, hey, we can't do it anymore, because then that's not sustainable. Then the third thing is to promote social and economic development. So a municipality, if it's not able to get an income and it's not able to have people who work, tend to not be able to provide services. So City of Johannesburg, the reason we can live better lives than other provinces or other municipalities is because we have Sandton, we have Randburg, we have the West Rand for manufacturing, we have the industrial areas. So the income and the amount of money City of Johannesburg has is a lot more than, let's say, Ekurhuleni may have. And it's the job of a municipality to try and make sure that job creation continues, people are able to keep their jobs, and people are able to create new jobs. Then the fourth point is to promote safe and a healthy environment, and then involve communities. So a lot of times, the point number 5, we don't do enough of in terms of just being involved. So every law that your municipality tries to put through, they must make people vote for it. So they'll have community meetings where they'll invite people to comment, or they'll invite people to write the municipality a letter to say, what do they think about this law? In that way, that they are never making decisions that community members disagreed on. But that's obviously not easy to implement. And as citizens, we are not all responsible. We don't really go and attend those meetings. Maybe even ask your parents, when last did they write a letter to the City of Johannesburg and tell them that they will be like, higher, I don't like this law. Ask them. They're not so involved. And that's why sometimes municipalities get away with what they get away with. So our focus will be safe and healthy environments. So what is that? First of all, a safe environment is where you are not risking your life or your property when you live in this area. So being safe from natural disasters. So if there are fires, can they be extinguished? But can you also make sure that we avoid having fires? Then things like making sure that there are no potholes, so that when we are driving our fancy cars that we bought because we got that degree we've been dying for, that now we don't have to replace our tires every day. You know, basic things like that. That's what you are paying your municipality to do, is to make sure that you are safe and your property is safe. Then a healthy environment that focuses on stuff like our water must be clean, our streets mustn't be full of sewage, and our dustbins are taken out, for instance. Those things are meant to help us have healthy environments. That's the job of the municipality. We can't do it just by ourselves. So even in the Act, so for those of you doing on service delivery, you must look for the Municipal Systems Act. It tells you everything that the municipality is responsible for. In that way, you can then say, when we talk about service delivery, the municipality isn't doing this and this and this, and according to the Act, they're supposed to do that. So it tells us that a basic service is one that ensures an acceptable and reasonable quality of life. And with regards to water, sewage, refuse removal, roads, stormwater control, electricity, housing, and firefighting. Basic stuff. So, for instance, with water, what is your municipality supposed to do? Your water must be healthy for you to drink and provide for poor households. So poor households have 6,000 liters, or what sometimes you'll hear people say 6 kiloliters is the very same thing. And then when they exceed the 6,000 liters, then they have to start paying for the water on top of that. With your sewage, they're supposed to literally make sure that our sewage system works. Okay, so blocked drains, they must deal with them.
Wait, sir, I have a question, sir. So you're saying each household gets from us 6,000 liters?
A poor household.
Oh, a poor household. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Now I understand.
Yeah.
Okay,
so cool. Then with your sewage, block pipes are not the job of private companies. So I don't know if you remember, it actually happened earlier this year in your school. We had a nice problem where we were smelling, but it wasn't our armpits. So we had a heavy block drain. And we couldn't just call any private plumber to come fix it, because the pipes are owned by the municipality. That was quite a crazy thing, but that we had to wait. And that's because it's a competency of the municipality. It isn't just something that any of us can do. Then refuse removal, at least once a week, dustbins must be taken, must be removed. And that little big blue thing there, it's called a skip, because in some communities, that's where we put our rubbish first, and then the municipality must remove it. Then when we look at roads and stormwater control, a lot of times when we see flooding in communities, it's because the stormwater drains are blocked. Because of what? Litter. So those things are things that have to be maintained specifically by the municipality. And later when we learn about intervention programs and educational programs, we will learn that municipalities have to encourage community members to recycle, to not litter, so that these things aren't having to be maintained every day. One stormwater drain that is blocked can cause flooding for a whole area. So these things are important to be maintained. Then when we look at electricity, very same thing, you know, illegal connections, municipality is the one that must remove that, fix it. Whatever electricity delays or issues, it's the municipality that must deal with it, unless ESCOM is the direct owner. Okay, so in the city of Johannesburg, it is literally their job and they call it city power. Then housing, municipalities, their job isn't to build houses, but it is their job to make sure that the houses get the services they need. And also when they do city planning, it is the municipality that should be directing government and province and saying, this piece of land, we want to build there. This piece of land, we don't think anyone should live on it, things like that. And then firefighting, it's also the municipality's job. And they also have to be making means that fires are prevented, and making informal settlements, for instance, more aware about how to avoid having fires, because we've seen on many occasions that when one shack catches fire, a whole area can catch fire. Good. So here are reasons for poor service delivery. First thing is sometimes municipalities are doing the job of the national government, and then the government doesn't pay them. So you hear this quite a lot. Sometimes a municipality will say, government wants us to build this and do that, but they didn't give us the money for it. So we spent our own money, and that's why we can't pay our workers. So that's what we call an unfunded mandate. You can look it up. Or for instance, people are not paying for their services. And because people are not paying, the municipality doesn't have an income, and without that income, they're not maintaining. Or you have instances where your government is giving a grant that is too little. So sometimes what our municipalities are doing wrong is they don't have an idea how many people live in the area. So you will hear sometimes the argument that was had a lot by our previous mayor was that too many foreigners are coming into areas and they are using all our services. That's why we have no money. Okay, so the government gives a grant according to their estimates of how much money you will need. Then good old-fashioned poor finance management, lack of proper land, and communities living too far from services. That then is a good way to look at it. Then if you want to see more community services, yeah.
Are we gonna get these slideshows? What shows?
But
these
as
things?
always, as always, can we continue?
Yeah, but it's a no. Okay.
It's because when madal,
Say, ungacali withdrawing people, please. Thank you, sir.
sonke sikuzwile ngisho. Good. So in your textbook, you will see different examples of other community services that should be run by municipalities, but also NGOs that a municipality might give money and ask to do it on their behalf, because they may not have like they don't have the means, they don't have the qualified people. I'll give you like a very simple example.
Wait, sir.
Yeah.
So can government initiate its own NGO?
No, that's why it's called a non-government organization.
Oh, a NPO then?
No, that's a non-profit.
Yes, can the government initiate its own?
No. That's why when a person who works for the government has to disclose that they own an NPO, because obviously then that NPO could easily be getting government funding, which could be then a way of getting more money than unnecessary.
It defeats the entire process of being an NPO.
Yes. When you're saying remember, when you're an NPO, it also means you can take private money from people, while government cannot take private money unless they are rendering a service. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Good. So when you guys are doing, especially those of you who are doing on poor service delivery, these slides will then help you to be clear about what are the services that often municipalities are not providing, and that is what causes people to create to have protests about poor service delivery. Good. Then our last thing, which is literally over 2 or 3 pages in your textbook, it talks about educational and intervention programs. So there's a difference between an educational program and an intervention program. So educational is literally, I need to give you information, I need to make you aware. So if we think right now of our times in COVID, one of the things that people are criticizing the government over is the fact that a lot of the time we are misinformed about what COVID is. So people are scared, or people are overreacting, or people are jumping to fake news because they're not being educated enough about what is really going on, how to keep yourself safe, when are you in danger. Now, an intervention program is when there's an urgent issue where we need to change people's behavior, otherwise they are going to cause themselves harm. So those are two different things. So an intervention program might have to be done in a more aggressive way. So earlier on today, when we heard the Department of Education speaking to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, they said that one of the intervention strategies will be to adjust life orientation so that it starts to discuss COVID and educate children. Why? Because they're realizing, obviously, that many people are misinformed. So if children are coming to school, we'll have to discuss what COVID-19 is, how to keep themselves safe, to give kids that skill, and hopefully that will go to the house. Because sometimes, yeah, parents don't listen, but maybe if the child says something, a parent will listen. Okay. So I'm gonna give you guys a bit of a chance to ask some questions if you have. I'm gonna give you a new link so that we can have 20 minutes after this to discuss specifically how your projects are going, as well as any other questions. So, but for now, do you have any questions about today's specific lesson? Any confusions, any things you want clarified? Unmute yourself and then ask.
Sir,
Yes.
I wanted to ask about your unfunded mandate part.
Yeah, cool. Ask it.
So how can the national government or the provincial government give an unfunded mandate to the local government?
So for instance, now when we're in a big crisis with COVID, for
Right.
instance, municipalities may be rushing to create masks that they hand out to poor communities because they want to keep them safe. But they might be using money that government hasn't given them yet. So let's say that they make 2-3 million, and then government later says, but you should have waited or nipapi. Then it might not be replaced, and then when they do the accounting later, they will realize that money was spent in the wrong things or not spent in the things that was budgeted for. That's how sometimes an unfunded would happen. Sometimes crises happen where government needs municipalities to just make quick decisions, but then later on there are issues of governance and money.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? Unmute yourselves. Okay, good. Then I'm busy creating the next lesson. I'm gonna put the link in our group because this lesson is about to literally die in the next 10 seconds. So you can go and have your bathroom break. You have my permission.